The air in the Kumasi home was thick, heavy with the scent of lilies and the lingering heat of the day. Relatives sat on wooden chairs, faces drawn, waiting for the finality of the funeral to settle. Efua stood by the window, watching the shadows stretch across the yard. Then, the silence shattered. Kwesi stood in the center of the living room, his pace erratic, his movements sharp. He did not look at the mourners. He looked at Efua. His finger jabbed the air, pointing directly at her. He spoke, and his voice boomed against the walls. A hushed room heard Efua stole Mother's savings. He claimed she had taken the money before the funeral rites were even finished. Every head turned toward her. The room went cold. The sound of a ceiling fan clicking in the corner became the only noise in the house. Relatives leaned forward, their faces tight with disbelief. Kwesi did not stop. He paced back and forth, repeating the accusation, his eyes scanning the room to ensure every witness heard the charge. The betrayal hung in the air, a physical weight that pressed down on everyone present. Efua remained still, her gaze fixed on him, saying nothing as the murmurs began to grow. Kwesi did not stop. He paced the floor, his voice rising with every passing second, demanding an answer that was not coming. He gestured wildly, his shadow dancing against the walls, yet the room remained unnervingly still. The relatives watched, trapped between the force of his words and the unnatural stillness of the woman he accused. Efua did not shout back. She did not even blink. She walked past him as if he were merely a draft in the room. Her stride was measured, rhythmic, steady. She crossed the floor while Kwesi's accusations turned into frantic, repetitive demands. She reached the mahogany table, her eyes locked onto his, and reached into a pocket. The room held its breath. She pulled out a small digital device. She set it down on the wood with a sharp, final click that echoed through the living room. It sounded like a gavel. She did not look at the relatives. She kept her gaze on her brother, who stumbled mid-sentence. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and suffocating. Efua stood over the table, her hand hovering just inches above the play button, waiting for the exact moment the room was ready to hear the truth. Efua pressed the button. The mechanical click of the tape engaging sounded loud in the quiet room. A second later, the air filled with a familiar voice. It was Kwesi's voice, but stripped of the frantic energy he displayed moments ago. On the recording, he sounded cold, clinical, and precise. He spoke of the cocoa farm, detailing the exact legal steps to transfer the deed into his wife's name. He listed the bank accounts he had already drained, noting the dates of each wire transfer with methodical satisfaction. The living room turned into a tomb. Kwesi froze, his jaw slack as his own words echoed back at him from the small device. The relatives sat motionless, their eyes darting from the recorder to Kwesi's pale face. A low rumble of voices began to rise from the back of the room. It started as a whisper, then grew into a chorus of disbelief and sharp, sudden anger. People stood up, chairs scraping violently against the floorboards. The shock of the betrayal hit the room like a physical wave. Kwesi opened his mouth to protest, but the recording continued, his own recorded laughter punctuating the plan to dismantle the family legacy. The truth was no longer an accusation. It was a recorded, undeniable fact, and the room was turning against him. Kwesi snapped. He lunged across the mahogany table, fingers clawing at the digital recorder. Efua moved with practiced precision, stepping backward and pulling the device against her chest to keep it out of reach. She did not hesitate. With her free hand, she swept a stack of papers across the table. These were the bank records, the wire transfers to his private accounts, each one dated and stamped with his own signature. Beside them, she laid out the property deed. The ink on the forgery was fresh, the signature a clumsy imitation that stood out under the bright room lights. Kwesi stopped, his momentum dying as he looked at the proof of his greed spread out before the gathering. His face drained of color, leaving him looking hollowed out. The village elder rose from his seat. He looked at the documents, then at the man standing trembling before him. He held up a hand to silence the room. The elder pointed to the papers, his jaw set in a line of judgment. Kwesi retreated, his breathing shallow, the weight of his own crimes finally anchoring him to the floor. The power in the room had shifted entirely away from him, and he had nowhere left to hide. The house fell into a heavy, suffocating silence after the elder spoke. Kwesi did not offer a single word of defense. He retreated to his room, the sound of his footsteps dragging against the floorboards. An hour later, the front door creaked open, admitting a gust of humid night air. A shadow moved across the porch, paused for a heartbeat, and then vanished into the darkness of the driveway. He was gone before the moon reached its peak. The morning brought a different light. Efua stepped out onto the porch as the sun climbed above the canopy. She walked through the rows of cocoa trees, the damp soil crunching under her feet. The air smelled of wet earth and ripening pods. Workers were already at their posts, their machetes flashing rhythmically in the early light. When they saw her, they stopped their work to nod, their expressions shifting from caution to relief. Efua reached the central clearing and pulled the harvest logs from her bag. She opened the ledger and marked the day's start, the ink soaking into the paper. The trust was secure. The ledgers were clean. She looked out over the fields, hearing the steady, collective rhythm of the farm waking up. The land was back in the hands of the family, and the cycle of work had finally resumed its proper course.